Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to this AMA session. I have the easy job, and the bunch of people that you see on the screen have the harder job. But before we get on to questions and help answer more about Copilot Intune, what are we talking about? We are talking about Copilot in Intune and all the fun stuff about Copilot. I'm Lavanya Lakshman, and I lead the PM efforts for Intune team. And here with me are, and I'll go in the order. Zach, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Zach Dvorak, product manager on the Copilot and Intune team.
Ravi?
Awesome. My name is Ravi Ashok, also a PM on the Intune team working on Copilot.
I'm
Mike?
Mike Donosky. Hey, I'm Mike Donosky. I'm also a PM on the Intune team. Focused a lot on some of the policy scenarios and, of course, the Copilot scenarios that we're talking about today.
Excellent. As we are waiting for questions to roll in, we're going to get started with one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, which is what are the new capabilities that is available in public preview? And I am just going to do eeny, meeny, miny, more. I'm just going to pick on Zach to kind of give us an overview of what exists in public preview today to bring our audience up to speed. Why don't you talk about it, Zach?
Yeah, sure thing. And as Lavanya mentioned, feel free to give us some questions. The link for that is going to be aka.ms/AMA/Copilot in Intune. So if you haven't used Copilot in Intune yet, some of the things you can look forward to, we have public preview capabilities across a couple different categories. We have some troubleshooting capabilities, which are going to allow you to drill into everything that there is to know about a device within Intune. You'll be able to understand group memberships and policy assignments. You'll be able to do comparisons across two different devices so you can understand what's similar and what's different. You can even get Copilot to analyze an error code for you. So if you see some sort of an error code on the device or in the console, you can have Copilot give you more context about what that error code means and what you might need to be able to do to fix it. Over in the policy space, we'll let Mike talk a little bit more about this, but you're going to be able to summarize policies, understand the impact of those policies on your end users, understand the security impacts. You'll even be able to ask Copilot if Microsoft recommends particular settings values for the settings within your policies. And then I'll let Ravi talk a little bit about some of our device query capabilities, which are going to be brand new in public preview. Ravi, do you want to jump into device query?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Zach. So in addition to what Zach mentioned, we have one more capability in public preview right now, which is a helper, an assistant, an add-on to our device query capability in Intune. For those of you who may or may not be familiar, device query is a relatively new capability in the Intune console that allows you to get data from your devices on demand. So for a device that you're looking at that you may be troubleshooting or inspecting, you can write a custom query your own in the console that gets sent right down to the device and gives you the information you're looking for. Copilot helps make it easier to use that capability by taking the KQL writing part out of it for you as the user. So you can bring your question about your device in natural language to Copilot, and if our device query capability can answer that question, Copilot will generate a KQL query for you that you can use to get the data that you're looking for.
Awesome. That sounds very exciting. And I'm hoping, Ravi, you have more exciting news coming along the way. You can just nod if that's true. All right. We have the first question from Dallas on Tech Community. Dano, I'm going to send this your way. The question is, what is the easiest way to get Copilot configured for use in Intune?
It's as simple as signing up. And actually, one of the things that's one of the things you want to make sure, especially if you're using an Intune, when you're going into the Security Copilot dashboard, when you go in, make sure that you're turning on the add-ons for Intune or the plugins, sorry. And so one of the things about Copilot is it only has access to what you as a user have access to. And I think when you're going in and setting it up, one of the important things is making sure that you're designing it in a way that the people who will be using it use it in the way that you sort of have in mind. So if you have certain areas that you're maybe not ready for, you don't necessarily have to turn those on right away and have the Copilot skills start running. Because keep in mind, Copilot for security spans not only Intune, but also across some of the Defender product and some other security products. So you can sort of fine tune that how you like when you go and set it up. The other thing to note is, I'm sure we're going to talk about it a lot today, but you also have to make sure that your RBAC is set up correctly. And when I say correctly, our recommendation is that if you're going to be making these read calls in on different attributes and things like that, and letting Copilot do that on your behalf, that you're going in and setting up that RBAC model in the right way. Definitely read is the way to go. We're still in the world of zero trust. We're still in the world of least privilege. And of course, because Copilot does operate with the RBAC that the user has and the RBAC rights, rights-based access control, if RBAC's a new term for some folks on the call, it will also respect PIM. So if you're going to be using PIM with RBAC to sort of extend the access that someone has so that Copilot can have extended access to go through and do the queries and things that it needs to do, then that's all something you can design out. So I think there's some easy steps on just going and signing up, getting everything up and running, provisioning your SCUs, but then there's sort of some top tips that I wanted to share there around sort of what to keep in mind when you're designing out your environment.
Mike, I'm also going to do.
Oh, looks like Lavanya paused out for a moment. Zach, was there anything you wanted to add on the setup bit?
No, I think you covered it well. The big thing is, it's important to recognize that Copilot in Intune is a feature of Copilot for Security. So when it comes to onboarding and configuring, like Mike mentioned, you're going to want to be onboarding to the Copilot for Security product. And that's where you'll go through the configuration steps. You'll provision your SCUs. Those are going to be the consumption units for Copilot for Security. And then once you have all that enabled, the Copilot and Intune features will light up automatically. Just to call out, you do need to have a privileged role to be able to onboard and configure SCUs. So I believe it's going to be Global Administrator or Security Administrator. So you may have to engage with somebody else in your organization to get everything set up. But then once it is configured, like Dano mentioned, it's going to use on behalf of authentication. So it will honor whatever privileges and RBAC that you have configured for your account, and you'll be able to interact with it directly in Intune.
Looks like Zach really answered what I was having as a follow-up for Mike, and I apologized for the technical glitch. I'm in the office network. I don't know. I just got dropped. Sorry about that. But let's keep this going. We have the next question from Vaishnav on LinkedIn. And is that the question you answered, Zach, or did you read my mind and answer the follow-up?
I haven't answered this one yet, but I'm happy to take it. The question here
all right, let me send it your way. Is there a plan to make Intune Copilot, and I'm going to rephrase that as Copilot in Intune, as part of trial license just for like other Intune suite products?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to share yet, but this is something that we're thinking about. Like we just mentioned, Copilot in Intune is going to be a part of the Copilot for Security product. And being able to offer trials is something that we're exploring there. As I'm sure you all know, the Copilot features are very resource intensive. And, as more GPU capacity comes online, that opens up more doors for us to be able to offer things like trials. So I'm hopeful we'll have more to share in the future, but unfortunately, no solid answers for you just yet.
All right. We are going to be excited to hear more about the trial. So keep us posted, Zach. So we're going to hit you on that. All right. We have the next question, and not sure the source of the question, but let me play this out. I noticed the security task features the other day, but wasn't quite sure how to take advantage of them. Can you explain more about security tasks and how we can use them?
I can answer this one. Yeah. So so for the other folks watching, this isn't necessarily Copilot related, but I'll answer it, obviously. So in endpoint security, there's an area called security tasks from Defender. So let's say you get a TVM result or something in Defender in the Defender portal, you can actually create a task there, and then it shows up in endpoint security. So think where you have a split persona or two different, you have two different users. Of course, you have your security admins or your SOC analyst or something like that. let's say they find an endpoint, they go, hey, this thing doesn't have firewall rules or something like that. You create a security task. It goes and sends off, shows up in that list, an endpoint security inside of Intune. And then that admin, whether it's a different department, different part of the company, what have you, those folks will then get that task, and it'll show up, and then they can action on it, click it complete, and it's kind of just a back and forth communication method. So nothing to do with Copilot. Definitely still something you can use inside of endpoint security, and something you could do. Maybe trying to think of ways you could tie Copilot in there, but maybe Copilot might recommend that the outcome is, hey, create a security task to have the Intune admin go and do this thing next. So yeah, you can be creative with it, but that's really what it is.
Awesome. I love the fact that this was non-Copilot, but we were still able to get to it. Awesome. Thank you, Nano. We have a next question, and Ravi, I'm going to send this your way. This is from elsewhere on Tech Community. Is Copilot available in developer tenants for testing? Do you want to talk a little more about the private preview and what we do, Ravi? And you may want to come off mute as well.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Cool. It's a great question. So is Copilot available in developer tenants for testing? What I know so far is if you have a Microsoft production tenant and you sign up for a security Copilot, and like Zach and Mike were talking about earlier, you enable the capacity in that tenant, and you enable security Copilot in that environment, then you'll be able to access and use it in Intune. So if you have a developer tenant, my understanding of developer tenants are that they're still production environments with some special designations. Mike, Dano, Mike, Zach, if you guys know more about this, please jump in and correct me. All you have to do to get Copilot enabled there is to go sign up for some capacity there. Even if it's just 1 or 2 SCUs, you have to go enable that in that tenant's environment, and you'll see Copilot in Intune become available to you. As far as I'm aware, there's no special programs for developer tenants, so that's your primary way of getting access to it. So yeah, and I'll invite my teammates to jump in case I said anything wrong.
No corrections, but I'll say there was another question that said, are there trial tenants available, or like trials available for Copilot? And I don't think there currently are any.
Nope, not yet. No. And the other thing I will encourage you to check out is Copilot for Security is an extensible platform, right? So you do have the ability to create custom plugins, and more information about that on this Copilot for Security docs. So that's also something in the context of developer tenants that may be interesting for you to explore.
Awesome. Let's keep this going. Why don't I ask Dano to talk more about how he's thinking about the policy management space, and just based on the initial rundown of what is available in public preview versus what our customers should be expecting in future, and what is kind of like your line of thinking from a product strategy perspective for the policy management space. Mike, do you want to talk more about it?
Yeah, I'll do that. And I'm also going to fold in this question I just saw from Jamie on Tech Community about AI simplifying the admin experience in Intune, but also being a little bit hesitant to make sure that Intune doesn't become dependent on it, and making sure that Intune can still remain 100% manageable without it. So I'm gonna fold that into my answer as well.
Sounds good.
Today in policy, there's 2 things that you'll see if you go through. So if you log into a Copilot tenant, the first thing you're going to see up at the top is a nice, beautiful rainbow banner that says, explore Copilot, get started with Copilot. What can you do? It'll say policy management, troubleshooting. And then as more capabilities show up, you'll see that carousel, depending on the size of your screen, sort of show more experiences. And if you click on the policy management, it'll bring you over to your policy list. And it'll have sort of 2 prompts for you, or 2 blue boxes that'll tell you how to get started. The first one is summarizing a policy. And really the idea behind summarizing a policy is first, just to get an idea of what the policy is. I think we've all been there where you're looking at it and, after a couple nights sleep, the naming convention you came up with originally maybe doesn't make sense, or you forgot to document something. You just want to see what a policy is all about. So you can summarize a policy. It'll tell you about the settings that are in the policy. And then you can take it one step further and ask a question, which really should be on the mind of anyone who's working in Intune, because Intune policy specifically is all about striking the balance between productivity and security, and making sure that when you are implementing security controls you're not also hampering people's ability to get work done. And so through the power of Copilot, we can sort of give that that prompt in that flavor. So when you're creating that policy or just trying to figure out what the policy is doing, you can get that flavor. It'll say, hey, this setting, this increases security, but also just so you know, users might not be able to do X, Y, and Z. So to give you this output, and then what you can do, the other scenario that we have, so you can do that at the policy level. You can also go into the setting level and do the same thing. So if there's one setting that you're not sure about, you can expand out, have a conversation. You can ask about the same thing, security versus usability. And you can ask 2 additional questions through the what we'll call the embedded experience. Sort of going forward, embedded experience means buttons in the UI in Intune that you can click and use. The first one is you can ask if it's configured in any other policies, which will give you conflict analysis and list out all the policies that we also see that that setting in. And then it'll list out the groups that it's assigned to for each one. And then the other thing that you can ask about is if there's any Microsoft recommendations. So if you're looking at some ASR rules, and of course, we know that the ASR rules have recommended values in the Defender baseline, it'll come out and say, hey, from the Defender baseline, this is recommended to be set to this. Those are the 2 main scenarios that we have that are in the embedded experience. I will sort of talk a little bit about each one and where we want to bring it, and then expand out and then come back for more questions. Because I do want to answer that question about like, how do we think about when we make Copilot scenarios, making sure that we're not, leaving people who aren't using Copilot behind in Intune. So for the summarization, we want to add that so that you can do it before you actually click save on a policy. And for investigating an individual setting, we want to add more to those recommendations and add more recommendation sources and things like that. So you get a little bit more confidence when you're setting that setting, how you're setting the value and what the impact's going to be. Or if you must be compliant with certain baselines and stuff like that, we want to start bringing some of that information into that experience. Moving forward, and this I think will be a bigger theme today that you hear all of us talk about, is moving towards open prompting. So if you've used any sort of AI tool in the past, you're probably familiar with open prompting, where you can, of course, ask any question that you like. We are in the process of taking these sort of built-out scenarios that I just mentioned, and especially in the policy space, I like to say we're teaching Copilot about Intune, because we're letting Copilot know about what a group is and how a group interacts with a policy and how assignments works and things like that. And so today you can ask like, hey, do any policies have this setting? In the future, we want to be able to let you ask more open-ended questions like, hey, show me all the groups that have this setting assigned to it. What are all the policies associated with that group? So we're really looking towards flexibility and making sure that when we get to that open prompt experience, which is partially there today, you can use it today in the securitycopilot.microsoft.com portal. And I think I hit that right. That's
Yep.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, Mike, so are you saying that the context is going to be very relevant to the open-ended questions that the customers are going to ask? Did I hear that right?
Exactly. Okay. Yep. That's exactly right. And then to the part about investments in Intune Core and everything else, we're still making these investments in Intune. And honestly, for every single Copilot scenario that we bring in, as PMs, we're thinking about this, is this actually just a feature? So there's been a few things where we said, oh, Copilot could do this, could do this, could do this. And then we kind of sit back and go, actually, that's just a base thing we should build that doesn't need Copilot. So yes, we're going through all of that thought process when we're building out these scenarios and making sure we're not, as you said, making Intune admins dependent on needing Copilot to get their job done. You should be seeing Copilot as a way that it makes your job a lot easier, simplifies it, saves you time, all that good stuff.
Excellent. And thank you for sharing more into your future thinking on policy management. I think we have a good lineup of questions. Zach, I'm going to send this next one your way. This is from one of our MVPs on LinkedIn. Thank you for this question. And it really talks about what I noticed is that the built-in prompt to analyze a Defender incident, the Microsoft 365 Defender incident investigation, where what they are observing is one SEU is not enough to fully cover the complete 7 prompt related scenario. And they're trying to get a confirmation, is this kind of like a known issue? Do you want to share your thoughts and what potentially could be happening, Zach?
Gotcha. Yeah. there's a lot to unpack here. So it sounds like what you're talking about is a prompt book, which is basically a collection of prompts that you can run in one fell swoop to complete some sort of a task. In this case, it sounds like we're doing a Defender incident investigation. So essentially behind the scenes, what that incident investigation is doing is it's taking that collection of prompts that have been compiled into this prompt book, and it's executing them all either in parallel or one right after the other for you. So in terms of how the consumption is calculated there, it would be as if you independently asked each of the 7 prompts one right after the other. Now, when it comes to how consumption is calculated, the security consumption units, SCUs, they are going to map to a formula that involves the prompt and the completion tokens that are required to understand your request, analyze the results, and produce a response for you. So there's really not a perfectly deterministic mapping between prompt and SCU usage, since it is going to depend on the data that's pulled, how large your tenant is, or how large the objects that are being pulled in are. So for example, if I'm analyzing an incident that doesn't have a lot of content, that's going to consume fewer SCUs than if I'm analyzing a very large incident that has a lot of related information. So this really isn't a system where we can confidently say that, this prompt book is always going to require a certain number of SCUs. In general, for Copilot for Security all up, Microsoft is going to recommend that you start your journey with 3 SCUs. 3 SCUs is sort of that magic number where that should be enough to complete pretty much any of the prompt books or the types of tasks that exist today. That guidance is likely to evolve over time, but that would be my recommendation for you, is start your journey around 3 SCUs. You shouldn't run into the same capacity issues at that level. And then, of course, you're able to adjust your SCUs up and down at any time. So if you are trying to do a more intensive series of prompts, or you're using several prompt books within a short time frame, you can always ramp up that capacity for the surge and then bring it back down after you're done. And remember, SCU, the calculator resets every hour. So these are consumption units per hour. And so if you do find yourself out of capacity, your options are going to be to either increase the number of SCUs that are available or wait until that hour resets. And then you'll have that consumption calculator reset for you, and you can start submitting prompts again.
Yeah, that's a great call out about the minimum recommendation and also what they potentially could do. The other thing, just to understand their usage pattern, if they have access to the standalone usage dashboard, they can look at how the consumption units are getting utilized for each of the plugins that they have as well. So I think that might be another way to understand their patterns as well, Zach, right?
Absolutely. If you go into the securitycopilot.microsoft.com, that standalone portal that Dana was mentioning a little bit ago, you will need to be an owner for this. But if you pop into the hamburger menu in the top, there's a page for owner settings and then usage dashboard. So you'll be able to see usage patterns over time, so you can understand when these spikes are happening and what the consumption looks like for the various tasks that you're doing.
Great. Yeah. All right. Let's keep this rolling. Ravi, this is a question coming your way. I think we have heard this in the past as well, and it will be good for you to clarify what is the difference between Copilot and Intune. I know customers do refer it as Intune Copilot, but we officially are strictly instructed by our marketing team and branding team to say Copilot in Intune and Security Copilot. Do you want to talk about the difference, Ravi?
Absolutely. It's a great question, and one that maybe we should have started with. So what is the difference between Security Copilot and Copilot in Intune? I think Zach mentioned this a few minutes ago, or maybe it was Mike, but Intune is in company alongside 5 or 6 other products in what we call the Security Copilot platform. So alongside Intune, there's Entra, Defender, Sentinel, Purview, Priva. All 6 of these products together are in what we call the Security Copilot platform. And if you go to what we've been talking about as the standalone Security Copilot portal, securitycopilot.microsoft.com, that's where you can have an interaction with your environment that spans all of these products. So you can ask a question about your environment, whether or about a CVE or about a security issue. And across all 6 of these products, Security Copilot is going to try and choose a capability, a skill to answer your question and give you that information. Now, Copilot in Intune is the encapsulation of the Intune part of that in our Intune portal. So instead of going over to securitycopilot.microsoft.com, which is the standalone portal where you'd have your interactions with your environment, right in the Intune console, where you as an IT admin or someone on the IT team may be used to interacting, you're going to find integrations in there that bring Copilot to you in the experience that you're working with. So what Mike was talking about earlier with summarizing policies and asking about security impact about policies, or what Zach was saying earlier about analyzing an error code or comparing 2 devices. You could go do this in the standalone Security Copilot portal if you wanted to. Those capabilities are available there alongside those from the other products that I mentioned. In Intune, we've really focused down into the Intune-based capabilities, and we've built these entry points in the portal itself that are relevant to those capabilities. So on a devices page or on a policy page, you'll find a Copilot button to get right into those troubleshooting capabilities directly, or those policy capabilities directly. So just bringing it back to the top, when we say Security Copilot, we're talking about the overall platform and the product that brings together these 6 Microsoft security and management and identity and compliance products all together. When we talk about Copilot and Intune, we're talking about how in the Intune portal, we've taken some of those key capabilities, especially the Intune focused ones, and exposed them in the Intune console for you to leverage in relevant places.
And when we say embedded experience, it's more referring to the Intune portal, Ravi?
That's right. When we use the term embedded experience, we're talking about the Intune console and the Copilot experiences integrated in there. When we use the term standalone portal, we're talking about securitycopilot.microsoft.com, where it's the whole product with the whole platform.
Gotcha. And you did talk about the 6 products. I'm going to do a quick quiz to see if you remember all the 6 products, Ravi.
Great. I think I already passed the quiz because I listed them, but I'm going to do it again. It's Intune, Microsoft Entra, Defender, Sentinel, Microsoft Purview, and Microsoft Priva. So all 6 of those products come together.
Awesome. You got 100 points out there. Since you were talking about the platform itself, I'm going to just bundle this with another question. Can you elaborate what SCU is, or how it is spelled, or what does it stand for? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, another great question. So what is an SCU? You've heard us talk about it a couple of times, even on this call. So SCU either stands for Security Compute Unit or Security Capacity Unit. It's one of those two. I actually will be frank, I forgot which one. But it is a measure of, as the term suggests, it's a measure of capacity for Copilot to be able to process your prompts, answer your questions, and for you as a user in your environment to have to be able to actually interact with Copilot, whether that's in the standalone Copilot for Security Copilot portal, or whether that's with Copilot in Intune. So the critical part of getting or a critical part of getting Security Copilot set up in your environment is to allocate enough of those SCUs based on how many users in your environment are going to be using Security Copilot and what their purposes for using Security Copilot are going to be, to ensure that everyone is able to make use of it. And the consequences of not doing that primarily are a little bit of what Zach was mentioning a few minutes ago, which is that some of your users in your environment may find that they're unable to interact with Security Copilot momentarily because of the full usage of capacity across the environment, or you'll just need to raise capacity to accommodate those users. And all of this is explained and available in Security Copilot documentation, as well as if you are an owner in your environment, you can go to the standalone Security Copilot portal, monitor your usage, monitor and adjust your SCU allocations as well. But overall, again, bringing it back up to the top, SCUs are the the lifeblood capacity unit that makes it possible for you to leverage Security Copilot in your environment. And you want to scale that up and down based on how many users in your environment are using it.
Yeah, so from a branding perspective, we may say secure compute units, but I think simplistically put, it's just the compute units that you need for processing any of the natural language prompts. Is that accurate?
That's right.
Okay, great. Thanks for the detailed explanation, Ravi. Now, it looks like Dano has been doing lots of thumbs up and smiling. So why don't we give this question to him? So this is from Alejandro on the tech community, where the question is, can I use Copilot in Intune to send custom notifications, and can the user interact with natural language? And I think I'm thinking this about more as open prompting related natural language prompts, Dano. So I will let you answer this question.
Yeah, I'm going to take this in two parts. So the first one, natural language. We are working towards making sure that our skills are broad enough. And when I say skills, it's a little behind the scenes. Skills are the things that we're actually building that allow Copilot to interact with Intune data. So if you ask something about a policy that picks a skill, the skill goes, oh, I know about policy. Let me go take this policy ID, pull back the information, process it, all that good stuff. So when I say skill, it's like it's the things that we're building inside of Intune so that Copilot can understand Intune stuff. We're working to make sure that we're picking the right skills, and also the skills are a little more flexible. Today, you have to be pretty specific, which is why we have those sort of canned prompts inside of our UX, because if you get it slightly off, or you use the wrong term, or you don't exactly use the right setting name, Copilot will come back and say, I don't actually know what you're talking about. So we're working on ways that we can change that so it is a little bit more natural language, so you can speak more naturally and say, hey, I'm looking for this type of setting, and it'll help you narrow down your prompt to get the thing that you're looking for. I think we've all been there when you're working with, insert any other Copilot or AI tool. Sometimes you throw the first prompt out there and you go, oh, that's not actually what I want. Let me work it this way, change it this way, add this, do this. That's just part of good prompt engineering. And we'll see some of that as we move forward with Intune, where maybe you'll throw something out, you'll get the response, you go, not quite what I was looking for, I'm looking for this. And so we want to make sure that that Copilot for Security is capable of doing that and reasoning over Intune data. The second part of this, what I interpreted this question as, is more about sending custom notifications. And right now, with Copilot, we're being very careful with responsible AI as to what we're allowing Copilot to do. You'll notice a lot of the things that we're talking about today are around querying, they're around getting information out, getting data out, finding the right thing that you're looking for. Things like create, things like sending notification, things like automation tasks, things like that, where your mind naturally goes when you think about what Copilot can do, and what you would like Copilot to do to save you time and help you expand your skill set. Today, we're not adding those things directly. We want to make sure that we do it the right way, make sure that it's in a controlled manner, something you can either approve or roll back or stuff like that. So we're thinking about, can you say, hey, every time you enroll a device, have Copilot generate a summary and send a summary out to the end user, something just top of mind. Not something we're ready for yet, but something that obviously across Microsoft, everyone's looking at and considering.
And I think the next one kind of is related to policy, so I'm going to send this also your way, Dano. Will Copilot be able to provide better explanations for the not applicable configuration policy errors when enrolling devices to mitigate issues faster? And this is coming from Jan.
Yeah, this is a good example of where we don't want to make things that are necessarily Copilot dependent. I think what we would do is we have an item. So for the rest of the folks, not applicable means, let's say that I have a device and it's on a newer version of Windows and there's a setting, or it's on an older version of Windows and there's a new setting. When policy computes, we'll mark that setting as not applicable because we know it's not going to work because the CSP isn't there, or whatever the requirements aren't there yet. Maybe the device hasn't updated yet. And so it'll show as not applicable. We could build something in Copilot where it could look at the versions and look at these types of things and come back and say, oh, it's not applicable because of X, Y, and Z. I think in this case, I'd much rather, as the policy owner, go out and say, we should build something better for that so that we give you the reason for not applicable, which is either going to be the OS is out of date, the CSP isn't there on the device, or it's the wrong SKU of Windows or edition of Windows, right? So I'd rather just show that. And then with Copilot, you would be able to maybe ask some questions about how to remediate that. Or you take the conversation further to say, why is this device out of date? Oh, it's running this OS version. Oh, that's because it's not in this update ring or something like that. So really thinking about Copilot helping you go those next steps. But for something as rudimentary as why do we have not applicable, I think I'd rather solve that through a feature than something in Copilot.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. And again, I hope I said the name right. I think it was from John, and I don't know why it's at the end. So probably I need my second round of coffee as well. This is a great question coming from Nirmal. And I think, Ravi, this will kind of help as a good segue into your North Star thinking about device query that exists in public preview today, and how you're thinking about expanding the scope, and what are some of the things under consideration, where the question is, can we query on all systems with the device query option instead of querying the system one by one?
Yeah, wonderful question. And, just to recap what we have so far, we've got the device query feature available today that, in the context of a single device, allows you to send an on-demand query down to the device to get some data about it. And the question is really asking, well, what about going beyond that single device context? What about going to the fleet level or the all devices level? And while it is a great question, there's not a whole lot that I can say today at this moment, other than the fact that this is something that we as a team, both in Copilot and our data platform team that works on our device query capabilities, we hear loud and clear from our customers and from our community. And it's something that we are thinking very deeply and actively about. We hope to be able to talk to you soon about more details in that space. And something that we're also actively thinking about is that any considerations we make to try and get there, to try and get where Nirmal is suggesting, is one where we're going to have Copilot, deeply integrated, deeply ingrained, just like we do in our device query feature today. So, I know that that's a bit of a non-answer, but it is to be as forthcoming as I can be at the moment. Like I said, something that we hear loud and clear, something that the team, both within Copilot and Intune, as well as across Intune and our data platform, we're thinking about very deeply, and we hope to be able to talk to you more about that soon.
Gosh, I couldn't make you spill the beans, did I? Sorry, Nirmal, I tried. The next question is coming our way from LinkedIn. With the guidance that admins should move settings that are now in place on administrative templates to settings catalog, can we conclude that Copilot for Intune will only support settings catalog in the future? And my pick is going to be Dano.
I'm going to throw a blog link out here, see if we can get that posted out. So Copilot for Security is supported in more than just the settings catalog. You can use it for compliance policy. You can use it for endpoint security policy. You can use it for settings catalog policy. I think administrative templates is one specific area where we don't have the flyouts. You should still be able to ask in an open prompt questions about administrative template policies. But the reason we haven't gone and added there, as pointed out in the blog, is there are certain policy areas you've seen. If you've been working in Intune for more than a few years, you'll notice that we are consolidating our policy experience into settings catalog, templates, and baselines, rebuilding all the templates to be on the same unified settings platform as a settings catalog. This has really done two things for us. It's making it a lot easier for us to ship new policies, make new templates available, update the baselines quickly, but also when we are looking at scenarios for things like Copilot for Security, where it's broad and across all the different policy types, it makes it a lot easier for both us to build things for it, as well as for you all to sort of manage it and understand the differences between different policies, because now it's all common building blocks for all the different policies that you're going to interact with. To answer administrative templates directly, we'll be taking that UX out of Intune, and we'll be migrating policies over to settings catalog. There's no action required. We'll be doing that probably over the next 6 to 8 months. The blog goes into more details, as well as things like device restrictions. So you'll see some UI coming out. Some of it has Copilot today, some of it doesn't. Depends on the wizard that it uses, just being totally frank. And Yeah, so you'll see it in more places. I encourage you to check it out in compliance policy because it's really cool. I myself used it recently. I'm mostly a Windows guy, a Windows admin, and I was looking over a feature in Mac compliance that I had not heard of before. So I just used Copilot for Security to get more information about how the compliance policy would work for that specific setting. And I didn't have to go do a whole bunch of research. I could just ask my question there.
And I think the URL is ready, so I'm going to quickly read out the URL. It's aka.ms/Windows device config profile tips. So that's all one word. And I'm going to repeat it again. It's aka.ms/Windows device config profile tips. Wow, that's a long one.
Cool.
And looks like, Dano, you are still on the hot seat because the next question is about configuration and compliance policy creation by Copilot on its own. Will we see it?
Someday, I hope. So create, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be really careful with what we allow things to create and what we allow Copilot to create. What we don't want is to create a scenario where Copilot's creating things on your behalf. And it's not the right thing. I'll share in the very early private preview, we did have a scenario where Copilot was creating unassigned policies. And our biggest challenge is if you say, hey, I want to block, you're stating your outcome, right? You want to be able to state your outcome. I want to block USB for devices that aren't BitLocker encrypted. And so it might pick the wrong policy. And so policy is something that is very precise, needs to be set the right way. Maybe you have to be compliant with a certain government baseline or some organization's baseline, and getting that setting just slightly off can be incredibly impactful. So we want to make sure that we're not sort of just going from here's like a sentence, and now my impact is this was rolled out to a bunch of devices. So we're looking at ways that we can integrate it, make sure that the right checks and balances are there, so that things aren't sort of being created on your behalf without you understanding the impact. Long story short, it's all about something that we're looking into, and it's just not quite there yet, but definitely something that's top of mind.
Thanks for the clarity there, and I think this will be super helpful in their environment, because I think the compliance policy is one that kind of gets used quite often. So yeah, keep us posted, Dano, and hopefully you can spill the beans soon, unlike Ravi, which is where the next question is for Ravi. And I'm going to split this into two parts. First things first, Ravi, why don't you talk about Copilot integration with XDR and Intune, right? And I kind of think about this more as a cross-product scenario. So why don't you first talk about all the Intune capabilities that exist in XDR, and then I will bring up the second part of the question, which is around auto remediation. I'm going to hold off on the second part of the question. Why don't we first talk about the capabilities, and then we'll go for the next one.
Great. Yeah. So cross-product capabilities or cross-product opportunities are something that's very much on our mind, especially as you heard me say earlier that Intune is part of this Security Copilot platform alongside these other products, these security, identity, and compliance products. And that is a wonderful opportunity for us to expose cross-product data, cross-product capabilities to our customers, whoever they are in the context that they sit. So whether you're an IT admin or a SOC analyst or a security admin, there's data from other products that aren't readily available in your tool that you typically work in that would be useful to complete your task. And as we consider that, as we have thought about that, there are some specific capabilities that we have worked with some of our friends on various teams in Defender to light up in the Defender portal for SOC analysts and security admins, where they can get some of this data in relevant places. So for example, if you're investigating a device that maybe there's been an alert phone for that device, or you're just drilling into that device for your regular inspection, continuing your day-to-day activities, Security Copilot will give you a summary of that device that pulls together a bunch of information. What we've recently incorporated into that summary is Intune device data. So as a SOC analyst who's potentially looking at a suspicious device, you're going to now get information fed to you through that summary that's, again, not readily available in the portal where you usually sit. You'd have to go somewhere else or ask somebody else on your team typically to get that information about who does this device belong to? What is this device? Is it like a laptop or a workstation? Is it a mobile phone? Is it a virtual machine? And some other critical information that really only comes from Intune. And what we've heard from some of our customers is that even just having information like that available at your fingertips can affect the next steps in a triage, or can affect how you might treat that device as you move forward in your workflow. Similarly, in Defender, there's a user identity summary that you can get when you're inspecting a user, or when you're inspecting an identity over in Defender. And there's Intune data that's available in that summary as well. Things like, what devices does this user have? When did they last log into these devices? And while this is all data that you could go seek out in another portal, or again, ask one of your teammates to get you, Security Copilot's saving you time and effort by bringing that data into a relevant context in the tool that you work in. And while those are just a couple of simple integrations that I gave an example of, we're starting to take that to the next level by thinking more in depth about some of the stuff that, for example, this question is asking about. So to reiterate what this was asking about, what about Copilot integration with XDR and Intune to do auto remediation of vulnerabilities using enterprise application management? That is it's a great suggestion for some of the deeper thinking that we're doing around actionability, automation, enabling Copilot to actually solve your problems for you. However, with the right approvals, the right warnings, the right rollback mechanisms that Mike was saying, and figuring that out and getting that right is both an art and a science, and something that's what we're in the middle of right now. So while we're certainly thinking about the flow that was just mentioned in this question, and scenarios very much like that, it's going to be a little bit of time until we really make sure that we figure this out in the right way, in a mindful way that enables our customers to get done what they want to get done with Copilot, while doing so in a responsible way with the right approvals and rollbacks in place. So maybe in a future AMA, we'll be able to talk to you a little bit more about that in depth. But for now, that's very much in the laboratory or the cooking phase.
That was good clarity, and I think this cross-product scenario will kind of continue to excite our customers. So keep us informed, Ravi. Zach, when Ravi was explaining about the XDR integration with Intune data, he did mention about devices. Do we support devices? When I say devices, I kind of think about it as physical, virtual machines, iOS devices. So what really do we support in the public preview for Copilot and Intune experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. So since Copilot and Intune is going to be tied to your Intune data, we'll support any devices that you have enrolled in Intune. So if you have devices across different platforms, Copilot in Intune is going to be able to interact across all of those platforms, all of that data that you have in Intune to get you answers. And so this applies pretty much across the board, where, Dano mentioned all the different policy types that you can reason over. When it comes to devices, we've got all the different device platforms. So really the sort of the limiting factor there, if you will, is going to be what Intune as a platform supports and what you as an organization have enrolled in your environment. And then from there, Copilot's going to be able to help you reason over all of that data within your environment.
That's a good clarity. So essentially what that means is we are not really doing any kind of filtering. We really look at the entire data that they have access. So we have not created any kind of new RBAC to support this Copilot and Intune experience, right? So that means if, let's say, we have a global admin who has access to all the data, we just kind of scan through that entire data set, which can comprise all of these devices. Did I capture that accurately, Zach?
Yeah, and just to kind of circle back on the RBAC point, right? So there's really two different sides to the RBAC equation that you should be thinking about. The first is, how do we configure RBAC such that the users we want to have access to Copilot and Intune have access to Copilot and Intune? And so there's a whole list of the different roles that are able to interact with Copilot and create Copilot sessions. That's actually going to be related to Copilot for Security itself. And then the other side of the equation is, what do I as an admin have access to based on the roles or the scope tags assigned to me? And you can think of that as logically equivalent to what Copilot is going to be able to reason over when I'm interacting with Copilot. So Copilot is going to use on behalf of authentication. So that way we can ensure that if you have configured your scope tags or your roles in such a way that, let's say I've set it up so that Ravi is only able to see North America managed devices. I've got scope tags for North America assigned to Ravi. So that way, as the North America admin, those are the only devices that he's able to see. The same is going to apply for Copilot. So even if Ravi's interacting with Copilot, asking about all of the managed devices in Intune, he's still not going to be able to see information about my devices in Europe or in APAC. The scope tags that apply to him as a user are going to apply to his interactions with Copilot as well.
Yeah, and it is great that we have not introduced a new logic around the data access, which I think makes it super convenient for our customers. So that's great. So I'm going to take this last question and ensure that we have enough time to do a quick wrap up, and also give our audience an opportunity to take a quick break, any break that they need before the next AMA session. And again, I'm going to direct this your way, Zach, which is, will Copilot help to address Intune running issues like automation of health check and reports, and all are as parallel?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think that when we think about our Copilot in Intune strategy all up, it really is a function of saving you time and helping to expand your skill set. So if there are opportunities that you see for us to be able to light up additional Copilot skills, or to be able to assist you with workflows, sort of streamline those daily operations that you do, we'd love to hear about them. And so when it comes to things like your health checks or the reports that you create, let us know what it is that you're doing. Where are the steps that are taking more time than they need to? Where do you find yourself clicking all across the portal to 5 or 6 different places to pull information? These are going to be perfect use cases for us to have Copilot jump in and help compile that information for you, and really, cut to the chase. Instead of giving you a whole bunch of data, it can help summarize the findings and sort of give you that readout or that executive summary that you're looking to create to share out information. So we'd love to hear more about your specific use cases. Like we mentioned earlier, you also have the ability to create custom plugins. So that could be an opportunity as well for you to be able to extend the functionality that we build, sort of that native functionality of Copilot in Intune. But these are the types of problem statements that we want to make simpler, make your job easier through Copilot in Intune. So like I said, talk to us about the specific processes that you feel like are burdensome, taking more time than they need to, and we'll look into ways that we can use Copilot in Intune to help make it easier for you.
Totally, yeah. And I think this is such a perfect timing, because I was just about to talk about the feedback link. And the link for all of you is aka.ms/Intune feedback. I'm going to say that again, aka.ms/Intune feedback. Please keep sharing your ideas and upvoting, because it helps the team prioritize. The more asks we get from all of you, the more energy we are going to put behind some of those asks. So please work with us. We want to work on capabilities and experience that is meaningful to you. What is not good for us as product managers is having worked on a feature and that's sitting on a shelf. That's not good for us, right? So we really do not like dust. We want to keep dust away from our lives. So we do not want to have any dust accruing on those capabilities. So talk to us. You know where to find us. We are available. And again, like I said, if any of you would like to try the Copilot in Intune experience, follow us through the links that is available. Again, it's aka.ms/AMA/Copilot in Intune. Send us your questions, your feedback our way. we would be happy to connect. The more we hear from you, the more we know we have to come back in such sessions and talk to you all about it, right? Again, next, share your feedback on Intune and Intune Suite. We have a session coming up right after this. With that, on behalf of my amazing team on camera and off camera here, I would like to thank you all and appreciate the time that you have taken to connect with us and ask all the important questions. And hopefully, we have done a good job of answering all of those. With that, thank you and signing off for now.
Bye.